Welcome to the Sleepstorian. Tonight we journey back nearly 2,000 years to a warm summer morning in the ancient Roman city of Pompeii. The date is August 24, 79 AD. The sun is beginning to rise over the Bay of Naples, casting golden light across the terracotta rooftops and white marble columns of this prosperous city. Pompeii is a place of beauty and commerce, nestled in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius. For the people who live here, this mountain is simply part of the landscape, a familiar presence that has watched over their city for generations. They do not know that Vesuvius is a volcano. That word does not yet exist in their language. Today will be unlike any other day in Pompeii's long history. But for now, in these early morning hours, everything seems perfectly ordinary. Let us walk through the streets together and experience the final hours of this ancient city. Take a deep breath. Relax. Let the story carry you gently into rest. The first light of dawn touches the eastern walls of Pompeii. The city is still mostly quiet, wrapped in the cool embrace of early morning. A few roosters begin to crow from courtyards and gardens. The air is fresh and clean, carrying the faint scent of the sea just a few miles away. In the bakery on the Via dell'Abbondanza, the main street of Pompeii, a baker named Marcus is already at work. He has been awake since before dawn, as he is every day. The large brick oven in the back of his shop glows with heat. He has been feeding it wood for the past hour, bringing it to the perfect temperature for baking bread. Marcus wipes flour from his hands onto his tunic. It is an old garment, worn soft from years of work, stained white from countless days in the bakery. He kneads another batch of dough with practiced rhythmic movements. Push, fold, turn. Push, fold, turn. The motion is soothing, almost meditative. He has made bread this way since he was a boy, learning the trade from his father, who learned it from his father before him. The dough is smooth and elastic beneath his hands. He shapes it into round loaves and places them carefully on a wooden board, ready for the oven. Each loaf is scored with his mark, a simple cross pattern that identifies his bakery. In a few hours, these loaves will be golden brown, their crusts crackling, their centers soft and warm. Through the open doorway, Marcus can see the street beginning to come alive. A cat walks lazily along the stepping stones that cross the street, placed there to keep pedestrians' feet dry when water flows through to clean the roads. The cat pauses, stretches, and continues on its way. Down the street, shutters are opening. A woman appears on a second-floor balcony shaking out a blanket. The fabric snaps in the air, releasing the night's dust. She drapes it over the iron railing to air in the morning sun. The Forum, the great public square at the heart of Pompeii, is empty at this hour. Its vast open space is surrounded by columns and temples, their white marble glowing softly in the growing light. The Temple of Jupiter stands at the north end, its massive columns rising toward the sky. Statues of gods and emperors watch over the empty square with blank stone eyes. In a few hours, this space will be crowded with people. Merchants will set up their stalls. Politicians will gather to discuss the affairs of the city. Lawyers will argue cases. Friends will meet to talk and conduct business. But for now, it belongs to the dawn, to the pigeons that roost in the temple eaves, to the silence before the day truly begins. A dog trots across the Forum, its claws clicking on the stone pavement. It is a familiar sight to anyone who knows Pompeii. This particular dog, a brown and white creature of uncertain breeding, seems to belong to everyone and no one. It sleeps where it pleases, eats scraps from friendly shopkeepers, and spends its days wandering the city streets. Near the Forum, the public baths are still closed. These magnificent buildings, with their heated rooms and cold plunge pools, will open later in the morning. Inside, slaves are already at work, stoking the furnaces that heat the water and warm the floors. The Hippocaust system, a marvel of Roman engineering, circulates hot air beneath the floors and through the walls. It is clever, efficient, and thoroughly modern by Roman standards. The baths are divided into sections. There are rooms for different temperatures, the frigidarium for cold water, the tepidarium for warm, and the caldarium for hot. There are spaces for exercise and massage, for socializing and relaxation. Going to the baths is not just about getting clean. It is a social ritual, a daily pleasure, a cornerstone of Roman life. The city of Pompeii is home to about 15,000 people. It is not the largest city in the Roman Empire, but it is prosperous and well established. It has existed for centuries, evolving from a small settlement into a thriving urban center. The streets are laid out in a grid pattern, organized and logical. The main streets run east to west, intersected by smaller streets running north to south. The blocks formed by these streets are called insulae, islands, each one containing several buildings. The buildings themselves are a mix of private homes, shops, workshops, and public buildings. The wealthiest families live in large houses called domus, built around central courtyards open to the sky. These homes have multiple rooms, decorated with colorful frescoes and intricate mosaics. Some have their own gardens, with fountains and statuary. Poorer residents live in smaller, simpler dwellings, sometimes just a single room. Many people live above the shops where they work, climbing narrow stairs to cramped quarters under the roof. The walls of Pompeii are ancient, built centuries ago when the city needed protection from enemies. But those days are long past. Now the walls are simply part of the city's character, covered in places with painted advertisements and political slogans. Someone has written in red paint on one section of wall, Lucius Popitius for Edel. He will keep our streets clean. On another wall, fresh fish at the best prices. Ask for umbricious at the market. There are also less official messages. Love declarations, insults, complaints, jokes. The walls of Pompeii are like an ancient version of social media, a place where anyone with a bit of charcoal or paint can leave their mark. As the sun climbs higher, more people emerge into the streets. A man hurries past, his toga wrapped carefully around his body. Togas are the formal dress of Roman citizens, but they are cumbersome garments, and most men only wear them when necessary, when conducting official business or attending important events. A slave girl walks by, carrying a large ceramic jug balanced on her head. The jug is filled with water from one of the city's public fountains. She moves with practiced ease, her posture perfect, not spilling a drop. She is perhaps 12 or 13 years old, dressed in a simple tunic, her hair pulled back from her face. The streets are beginning to smell of cooking now. Bread baking, oil heating, herbs and garlic being fried. Pompeii is waking up hungry. By mid-morning, Pompeii is fully awake. The streets are busy with activity. Shops have opened their wide doorways to the street, displaying their goods. The sound of hammering comes from a metalworker's shop. A potter shapes clay on his wheel, his hands moving with fluid precision. In the fuller's workshop, men are treading cloth in large vats. Fullers clean and process wool cloth, making it soft and white. It is hard, dirty work. The men stand in the vats barefoot, stomping the cloth in a mixture of water and chemicals. The chemicals include something unexpected, urine, collected from public urinals around the city. Urine contains ammonia, which helps clean and whiten the fabric. It is unpleasant work, but necessary, and fullers are essential craftsmen in any Roman city. The cloth hangs to dry on frames outside the workshop, white lengths moving gently in the morning breeze. Nearby, a wine shop has attracted its first customers of the day. The thermopolium, as such establishments are called, is a combination of bar, restaurant, and takeout counter. Large clay jars called dolia are set into a marble counter. These jars contain wine, olive oil, and prepared foods. The proprietor ladles hot soup into a bowl for a customer, accepting payment in bronze coins. The customer sits on a bench to eat, breaking off pieces of bread to dip in his soup. He is a laborer, his hands rough and calloused, his tunic stained with the evidence of hard work. He eats quickly, efficiently, barely tasting the food. When he is finished, he wipes his mouth with the back of his hand, nods to the shop owner, and returns to his day. The marketplace near the forum is now crowded and noisy. Vendors call out, advertising their goods. Fresh fish, caught this morning in the bay. Vegetables from nearby farms. Pottery, lamp oil, cloth, herbs, spices. A woman examines a piece of fabric, feeling its texture, holding it up to the light, negotiating a price with the merchant. Children run through the crowd playing a game of chase. Their laughter rings out, bright and clear. A mother calls to her son, telling him to stop running and come help carry the shopping. He pretends not to hear at first, then reluctantly obeys. In one of the grand houses on the north side of the city, a woman named Claudia is overseeing her household. She is the wife of a wealthy merchant, and this house is a reflection of her family's status and prosperity. The house is built around a central atrium, an open courtyard with a shallow pool in the center to collect rainwater. The walls are painted with elaborate frescoes depicting scenes from mythology. In one panel, Venus rises from the sea, her body perfect and pale. In another, Bacchus, the god of wine, reclines among grapevines, a cup in his hand. The floor is covered with intricate mosaics, small tiles of colored stone arranged in complex geometric patterns. In the entryway, there is a mosaic of a dog with the words "Cave Canem" beneath it. Beware of the dog. Claudia moves through her home with quiet authority. She checks that the slaves are completing their tasks, sweeping, dusting, preparing the day's meals. She inspects the garden, noting that some of the plants need water. She speaks to the cook about what should be served for the evening meal. She is dressed in a stola, a long tunic-like garment that reaches to her feet. Over this she wears a palla, a rectangular shawl draped elegantly over her shoulders. Her hair is carefully arranged in the current fashion, curled and pinned, adorned with a simple gold hairpin. Claudia's life is one of relative ease, but it is not without its responsibilities. Running a household of this size requires organization and attention. She must manage the slaves, oversee the budget, plan meals and social events, and maintain her family's social standing. Her husband is already out, conducting business in the Forum. He deals in wine and olive oil, importing goods from across the empire and exporting local products. It is lucrative work, and it has made their family wealthy. They have 2 children, a son, Marcus, who is 15, studying rhetoric and preparing for a career in politics or law, and a daughter, Julia, who is 12, learning the skills she will need to manage her own household someday. Julia is in her room now, practicing her reading. She has a small wooden tablet covered with wax, and she uses a stylus to scratch letters into the surface. When she makes a mistake, she can smooth the wax and start over. She is reading a passage from Homer, the ancient Greek poet whose stories of heroes and gods are considered essential education for any Roman child of good family. The words are in Greek, not Latin. Educated Romans are expected to be fluent in both languages. Greek is the language of culture, of philosophy, of classical learning. Latin is the language of law, of government, of daily life in Rome and its territories. Julia finds the Greek difficult. The letters are familiar, but the words seem to tangle on her tongue when she tries to read them aloud. Her tutor, an elderly Greek slave named Philippus, sits nearby, listening, correcting her pronunciation when necessary. Again, he says gently, start from the beginning of the line. Julia sighs but obeys. She wants to be outside, playing in the garden, but she knows her lessons are important. Her mother reminds her often that an educated woman is a credit to her family. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, in the amphitheater, preparations are underway for the gladiatorial games scheduled for tomorrow. The amphitheater is one of the oldest permanent stone amphitheaters in the Roman world, built nearly 200 years ago. It can hold up to 20,000 spectators, more than the entire population of Pompeii. When games are held here, people come from all the surrounding towns and villages. Workers are raking the sand in the arena, smoothing it out, removing any debris. The underground chambers where the gladiators and animals are kept are being checked and secured. Tomorrow will be a day of entertainment and excitement, but today there is only preparation. The gladiators themselves are housed in a barracks near the amphitheater. They are a mix of slaves, criminals, and free men who have chosen this dangerous profession. Life as a gladiator is brutal and short, but successful fighters can win fame and fortune. The crowd loves a skilled gladiator, especially one with flair and personality. In the barracks, a young gladiator named Titus is practicing with a wooden sword. He is 20 years old, tall and muscular, his body marked with scars from previous fights. He has been a gladiator for 2 years and he has survived 5 matches. He hopes to survive 5 more, and then 5 more after that. His trainer watches him critically, noting his footwork, the angle of his strikes, the way he holds his shield. Faster, the trainer says. And keep your guard up. You're leaving yourself open. Titus adjusts, tries again. Sweat drips down his face. He is focused, intent. Tomorrow he will fight for his life, and he intends to win. Back in the heart of the city, the day continues its ordinary rhythms. A barber shaves a customer under the shade of an awning. A cobbler repairs a sandal, his needle and thread moving in practiced patterns. A teacher instructs a small group of boys in reading and arithmetic, his voice droning in the warm air. In the temple of Isis, a priest is conducting the morning rituals. Isis is an Egyptian goddess, but her worship has spread throughout the Roman Empire. The temple is beautiful and mysterious, decorated with Egyptian-style paintings and hieroglyphs. The priest, dressed in linen robes, offers incense and prayers, tending the sacred flame that must never be allowed to go out. The worshippers who have come for the morning service stand in quiet reverence. They have come to ask for blessings, for protection, for good fortune. They leave small offerings, flowers, coins, food, on the altar. Among the worshippers is a woman who has come to pray for her daughter, who is ill with a fever. She stands before the statue of Isis, her hands clasped, her lips moving in silent prayer. The goddess looks down with serene, painted eyes, offering neither promise nor denial, only her ancient presence. The morning is growing warmer. The sun is high now, approaching noon. In the forum, under the shade of the colonnades, men are gathering to talk politics and business. Some sit on the steps of the temples. Others stand in small groups, their voices rising and falling in animated conversation. A politician is giving an impromptu speech, practicing for a formal address he will give next week. His friends listen politely, offering suggestions and corrections. "You should emphasize the water supply issue," one says. "People care about that. Make it clear what you'll do to improve it." The politician nods, making mental notes. Elections in Pompeii are serious business. Competition for public office is fierce, and candidates must work hard to win the votes of their fellow citizens. Nearby, a lawyer is consulting with a client about a property dispute. They speak in low voices, the lawyer taking notes on a wax tablet. The law in Rome is complex and detailed, covering everything from inheritance rights to commercial contracts to criminal offenses. A group of young men pass by, heading toward the Palestra, the public gymnasium. They are going to exercise, to practice wrestling and boxing, to oil their bodies and scrape off the sweat with curved bronze tools called strigils. Physical fitness is important in Roman culture. A healthy body is seen as evidence of self-discipline and good character. The city is alive with purpose and activity. Everyone has somewhere to be, something to do. It is a normal day in Pompeii, like thousands of days before it. But on the slopes of Mount Vesuvius, something is happening that is not normal at all. At the stroke of noon, marked by the shadow of the sundial in the forum reaching its shortest point, a subtle tremor runs through the ground beneath Pompeii. It is barely noticeable, a faint vibration lasting only a second or two. In the marketplace, a stack of pottery rattles slightly. In a house, a lamp swings on its chain. Most people don't even register it. Those who do simply pause, note it, and continue with what they were doing. Earthquakes are not unusual in this region. There was a significant one 17 years ago in 62 AD that damaged many buildings in Pompeii. The city has been rebuilt since then, better and stronger. A few tremors now and then are simply part of life here. But this tremor is different. It is not an earthquake in the usual sense. It is the mountain waking up. Deep beneath Mount Vesuvius, forces that have been building for centuries are reaching a critical point. Magma is rising through the rock, seeking release. The pressure is immense, contained for now, but growing stronger. On the surface, Vesuvius looks peaceful. Its slopes are covered with vegetation, green and lush. Vineyards climb the lower reaches of the mountain. The soil here is rich, volcanic soil, perfect for growing grapes. The wine from these vineyards is famous, sought after throughout the region. Farmers tend their vines, moving among the rows, checking for pests and disease. They know nothing of what lies beneath their feet. They see Vesuvius as a blessing, not a threat. The mountain provides them with fertile land and protection from harsh winds. It is simply part of their world. Higher up the mountain, where the vegetation thins and the rock becomes more exposed, A shepherd is tending his flock of goats. The animals graze on the sparse grass and hardy shrubs that grow in the thin soil. The shepherd sits on a rock, watching his goats, enjoying the warmth of the midday sun. He notices that the goats seem restless. They are moving more than usual, bleating and calling to each other. One of them keeps trying to head down the mountain, away from the peak. The shepherd calls to it, redirecting it back to the flock. Animals can sense things that humans cannot. They feel vibrations in the earth, smell changes in the air, detect subtle signs that something is not right. The shepherd's goats are trying to tell him something, but he does not understand their language. He eats his lunch of bread and cheese, drinks from his water skin, and settles back against the rock for a brief rest. The sun is warm, the breeze is gentle. It seems like a perfect day. Back in Pompeii, life continues. The afternoon is the time for rest, for escaping the heat of the day. Many shops close during the hottest hours. People retreat to their homes, to shaded courtyards and cool rooms. In the house of Claudia, the family is eating the midday meal. They recline on couches arranged around a low table, Roman style. The slaves bring dishes of food: bread, cheese, olives, cold meat, fruit. There is wine, mixed with water in the proper proportion. Romans rarely drink wine undiluted. That would be considered barbaric. The conversation is light, casual. Claudia's husband talks about his business. Their son Marcus mentions something he learned in his studies. Julia picks at her food, more interested in a story her mother is telling about a neighbor's upcoming wedding. After the meal, Claudia's husband retires to his study for his afternoon rest. This is a common Roman custom, a brief sleep or period of rest during the hottest part of the day. The house is quiet now, suspended in the lazy peace of afternoon. But the peace is interrupted by another tremor, stronger than the first. This one is unmistakable. The whole house shakes. A fresco on the wall cracks, a thin line appearing in the plaster. The water in the impluvium, the pool in the atrium, sloshes against its sides. Claudia and her children look at each other with concern. The slaves pause in their work, exchanging worried glances. "It's nothing," Claudia says, keeping her voice calm. "Just a small earthquake. You remember we've had them before." But there is a note of uncertainty in her voice. That tremor was stronger than usual, and as the afternoon wears on, there are more of them. Small shakes coming at irregular intervals. Each one causes a moment of alarm, then subsides, allowing people to convince themselves that everything is fine. In the forum, a group of men are debating whether they should be concerned. One man, an older merchant who has lived in Pompeii his entire life, insists there's nothing to worry about. "The earth shakes sometimes," he says with a shrug. "It always has. We rebuilt after the big earthquake, and we're still here." But a younger man is not so sure. "These tremors feel different," he says. "And they keep coming." "Maybe we should..." "Should what?" the older man interrupts. "Abandon the city every time the ground shakes? We'd never get anything done." The debate continues, but no consensus is reached. Some people are nervous. Others are dismissive. Most fall somewhere in between, concerned but not yet alarmed enough to take action. In truth, there is nowhere safe to go. If they leave Pompeii, where would they flee? To Herculaneum, the town to the west? To Naples, to the countryside? All of these places are equally close to Vesuvius. And besides, what if the tremors stop and life returns to normal? They would look foolish for having panicked. So most people stay. They go about their business, albeit with a heightened sense of awareness, an undercurrent of unease that wasn't there this morning. At the gladiator barracks, Titus has paused in his training. The tremors have unsettled him, not because he fears earthquakes. He has faced death in the arena and does not frighten easily, but because they interfere with his concentration. His trainer has dismissed the practice session early, telling the gladiators to rest before tomorrow's games. Titus lies on his narrow bed in the barracks, staring at the ceiling. He thinks about tomorrow's fight. He thinks about his family, far away in the countryside, whom he hasn't seen in years. He thinks about freedom, about what he would do if he ever won enough victories to buy his way out of this life. He does not think about Mount Vesuvius. Like everyone else in Pompeii, he has no concept of what is about to happen. The afternoon shadows are lengthening now. The sun is beginning its descent toward the western horizon. The heat of the day is starting to ease. replaced by a cooler, more comfortable temperature. In the Temple of Venus, the patron goddess of Pompeii, a priestess is preparing for the evening rituals. She arranges fresh flowers on the altar, lights new incense, checks that the oil lamps are filled and ready. The temple is beautiful, with painted walls and a marble statue of Venus herself, the goddess of love and beauty. The priestess has felt the tremors, but she is not particularly worried. She has faith that the gods will protect the city. Pompeii is under Venus's special care. What harm could possibly come to them? She begins to sing a hymn, her voice echoing in the temple's interior. It is a prayer of praise and thanksgiving, ancient words passed down through generations. The melody is simple and haunting, a sound as old as the city itself. Outside, the streets are beginning to fill again as people emerge from their homes after the afternoon rest. Children are playing. Dogs are barking. A group of men are setting up tables and benches outside a tavern, preparing for the evening's business. The tremors have become almost constant now, though still relatively minor. A continuous uneasy vibration in the ground. It's like the earth itself is nervous, restless, unable to settle. Some people have started to leave the city, deciding that discretion is the wiser choice. They load their valuables onto carts, gather their families, and head out through the city gates. But they are still a minority. Most people remain, either believing there's no real danger or simply unable to imagine abandoning their homes and businesses. On the slopes of Vesuvius, the shepherd has finally noticed that something is seriously wrong. His goats are now frantic, trying desperately to flee down the mountain. Birds are flying away from the peak in agitated flocks. Even the insects seem to have vanished. The shepherd stands and looks up at the summit of Vesuvius. At first he sees nothing unusual. Then he notices something that makes his blood run cold. There is a thin plume of smoke or steam rising from the top of the mountain, something he has never seen before. As he watches, the plume grows larger, darker. It is not smoke from a fire. It is something else, something deep and ancient and powerful, forcing its way up through the rock. The shepherd doesn't wait to see more. He abandons his flock and runs down the mountain as fast as his legs can carry him, stumbling over rocks, sliding on loose soil, his heart pounding with primal fear. Behind him, Vesuvius is waking up. At approximately 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Mount Vesuvius explodes. The sound is beyond anything that can be adequately described. It is not merely loud. It is a sound that seems to come from the earth itself, a roar that shakes the air and the ground and everything in between. It is the sound of unimaginable forces being unleashed, of the planet's power on full display. In Pompeii, people stop whatever they're doing and turn toward the mountain. What they see defies comprehension. A massive column of ash, rock, and gas is shooting straight up from the summit of Vesuvius. It rises at incredible speed, climbing thousands of feet into the air in a matter of moments. The column is dark, nearly black, a churning, roiling mass of destruction. It continues to rise higher and higher until it reaches a height of perhaps 15 miles. There it begins to spread out, forming a shape like a Mediterranean pine tree with a tall trunk and a spreading canopy. This umbrella cloud of ash and pumice expands across the sky, blotting out the sun. For a moment, everyone in Pompeii simply stands and stares, frozen in shock and disbelief. The mountain that has watched over their city for generations, the familiar landmark that has always been simply part of the landscape, has transformed into something monstrous and alien. Then the panic begins. People start running. Though they have no clear idea where they're running to, parents grab their children. Slaves flee from their masters' houses. Merchants abandon their shops. The streets fill with terrified crowds, everyone pushing and shoving, trying to escape. But escape to where? The entire Bay Area is visible from Pompeii, and people can see that the eruption is affecting everywhere equally. There is no obvious direction of safety. Some people run for their homes, seeking the familiar comfort of their own walls. Others head for the city gates, hoping to flee to the countryside. Still others run to temples, seeking divine protection. In the Forum, the orderly center of civic life has dissolved into chaos. People are screaming, crying, praying. Some are on their knees, begging the gods for mercy. Others are still trying to maintain some semblance of calm, calling out instructions that no one is hearing. The first fallout begins perhaps 20 minutes after the initial explosion. Small pieces of pumice start raining down from the eruption column. Pumice is volcanic rock filled with air bubbles, light and brittle. These first pieces are small, the size of grapes, and they fall relatively slowly, like strange gray snow. At first, people try to brush them away, annoyed but not yet terrified. But the pumice continues to fall and the pieces get larger. Soon they are the size of walnuts, then fists. They clatter on the roof tiles, bounce off paving stones, strike people's heads and shoulders. The accumulation begins. The pumice piles up in the streets, on roofs, in gardens. It is light, but there is so much of it. Within the first hour, there are several inches of pumice covering everything. Within 2 hours, a foot. The weight begins to stress the roofs of buildings. The sky has turned completely dark now, despite it being only mid-afternoon. The massive ash cloud has blocked the sun entirely. It is like night has fallen, but a strange, oppressive night illuminated by flashes of lightning within the eruption cloud. The lightning is a beautiful, terrible display, blue and white streaks crackling through the dark mass above. Claudia has gathered her family in the strongest room of their house, an interior chamber away from windows. Her husband has returned from the forum breathless and covered in ash. Their children are terrified, clinging to their parents. The slaves huddle in corners, uncertain and afraid. "We should leave," Claudia's husband says. "We need to go now while we still can." But Claudia looks at the pumice already piling up outside their door and shakes her head. "The streets will be impassable soon. And where would we go? At least here we have shelter." It is a terrible decision to have to make, and neither option seems safe. Stay and risk being buried in the house, or flee into the chaos outside, into the falling pumice and the panicked crowds. They decide to stay for now, to wait and see if the eruption stops. Surely it cannot continue like this indefinitely. Surely it will end soon, but it does not end. The pumice continues to fall, hour after hour, building up higher and higher. In the amphitheater, the gladiators and their trainers have taken shelter in the underground chambers beneath the arena. The thick stone walls and ceiling provide good protection from the falling pumice. But they are trapped now, unable to leave, listening to the muffled roar of the eruption above them. Titus sits with his back against the stone wall, his wooden practice sword still in his hand. He had been holding it when the eruption began, and he hasn't let go. It's foolish, he knows. A wooden sword is no protection against what's happening. But somehow it makes him feel better to have a weapon in his hand, even a useless one. Around him, other gladiators sit or pace nervously. Some are praying. One man is weeping quietly. Another is simply staring at nothing, his mind unable to process what is happening. In the temple of Isis, the priests and worshippers have barricaded themselves inside. They have brought food and water, hoping to wait out the catastrophe. The sacred flame still burns on the altar, tended carefully. As long as the flame burns, there is hope. A young priest is leading prayers, his voice steady despite his fear. The worshippers join in, finding comfort in the familiar words. Outside, they can hear the continuous clatter of falling pumice, like a deadly hailstorm that never ends. Throughout the city, similar scenes are playing out. People huddled in buildings hoping their roofs will hold. Families clinging together in terror. Some people attempting to flee, struggling through streets that are filling up with pumice, making their way toward the city gates. Those who do make it out of the city face their own challenges. The roads are clogged with refugees. Carts are stuck in the accumulating pumice. Horses and donkeys are terrified, refusing to move or bolting in panic. The sea offers no escape. The bay is churning with massive waves, stirred up by the seismic activity beneath the water. Several people who tried to flee by boat have been drowned when their vessels capsized. The Roman naval fleet, stationed at Misenum on the other side of the bay, has launched a rescue operation. Ships are attempting to reach the coast near Pompeii and Herculaneum to evacuate people. But the conditions are extreme, the water's dangerous. It is heroic and largely futile. Leading this rescue attempt is Pliny the Elder, the admiral of the fleet and a famous scholar and natural philosopher. Pliny is fascinated by the eruption. Even as he organizes the rescue ships, he is observing the phenomenon, trying to understand it. He has his secretary with him, taking notes on everything they see. Pliny's nephew, a young man also named Pliny, has chosen to stay behind at Messinum. He will survive the eruption and later write 2 famous letters describing what he witnessed. These letters will become some of the most important historical documents we have about the destruction of Pompeii. But Pliny the Elder will not survive. He will die on the beach at Stabiae, overcome by toxic gases from the eruption. Back in Pompeii, the situation is deteriorating rapidly. The pumice is now several feet deep. Roofs are beginning to collapse under the weight. The sound of buildings failing adds to the cacophony of terror. The crash of tiles, the crack of wooden beams, the rumble of falling walls. In Claudia's house, they hear their neighbor's roof give way. The sound is terrible, a long groaning collapse followed by a crash. They pray that their own roof will hold, but they can hear the beams creaking above them, stressed beyond their design limits. Claudia's husband makes a decision. We have to go, now. The roof won't last much longer. They gather what they can, some jewelry, a few coins, warm cloaks. They wrap cloth around their heads and faces for protection. Then they push open the door and step out into a nightmare. The street is unrecognizable. What was once a clean, paved thoroughfare is now buried under more than 3 feet of pumice. The stones that marked pedestrian crossings are completely hidden. The air is thick with falling ash and pumice, making it hard to breathe, hard to see. They struggle forward, each step an effort. The pumice shifts under their feet like walking in deep sand. The larger pieces continue to fall from above, striking them despite their makeshift head coverings. Julia cries out when a piece hits her shoulder hard enough to bruise. Other families are doing the same, emerging from their houses, attempting to flee. The streets are full of desperate people, all moving slowly through the deepening volcanic debris. Some are carrying bundles of possessions. Others have abandoned everything in their panic to escape. An elderly man falls in front of Claudia's family. Her husband and son stop to help him up, but the man cannot continue. He is exhausted, perhaps injured. They try to support him between them, but he begs them to leave him, to save themselves and not be slowed down by an old man who is already dying. It is a terrible moment, a terrible choice. But they cannot carry him, and staying means death for all of them. Claudia's husband presses some coins into the old man's hand, though what use money is now, no one knows. Then they move on, leaving him sitting against a wall, his face resigned. They are heading for the Herculaneum Gate on the northwest side of the city, hoping to escape into the countryside. But progress is agonizingly slow. It takes them more than an hour to travel what would normally be a 10-minute walk. Finally, they reach the gate. Others have had the same idea. There is a crush of people trying to get through, pushing and shoving. A cart has gotten stuck in the gateway, blocking most of the passage. People are climbing over it, crawling around it, anything to get through. Beyond the gate, the situation is no better. The roads are clogged with refugees and vehicles. The pumice is just as deep here as in the city. There is nowhere safe to go. Claudia's family manages to get perhaps half a mile from the city before they can go no further. They are exhausted, struggling to breathe in the ash-filled air. They find a partial shelter under a rocky outcrop and huddle there, hoping for the eruption to end. Around them, hundreds of others are doing the same. Scattered across the landscape, people are seeking any shelter they can find. Some hide in buildings. Others crouch behind walls or under trees, as if these flimsy protections could save them from the mountain's fury. The pumice continues to fall as evening approaches, though the darkness is so complete that the passage of time is difficult to track. There is no sunset to mark the end of the day, just a continuation of the terrible black midnight that has fallen over the region. In the city, those who remain are in increasingly desperate straits. The pumice is now more than 6 feet deep in places. Many buildings have collapsed. Those that still stand are under tremendous strain. In the Temple of Isis, the roof finally gives way. The priests and worshippers scramble for safety as tiles and beams come crashing down. The sacred flame is extinguished, snuffed out by falling debris. Some people manage to escape the temple, fleeing into the streets. Others are not so lucky, trapped beneath the rubble. The young priest who had been leading prayers survives. He emerges from the temple into a hellscape of darkness and falling ash. He can barely see, barely breathe. He wanders through the streets, disoriented, calling out for other survivors. But his voice is swallowed by the roar of the eruption and the clatter of falling pumice. In the gladiator barracks, the situation is grim but stable. The underground chambers are still intact, though the men can hear buildings collapsing above them. They have no food, little water, and no idea when or if it will be safe to emerge. Titus has given up on his wooden sword. He sits in the darkness. There is no light down here now. The lamps have all burned out, and thinks about his life. He thinks about the choices that led him here, to this underground prison, to this moment. He wonders if he will die here, buried alive beneath tons of volcanic stone. Some of the gladiators have fallen asleep, exhausted by fear. Others are still awake, talking quietly in the darkness, sharing stories of their lives, their homes, their regrets. It is a strange bonding, these men who fight each other for entertainment, now facing death together as equals. Miles away in Misenum, young Pliny the Younger is watching the eruption from across the bay. Even at this distance, the sight is terrifying and awe-inspiring. The eruption column towers into the sky, illuminated by internal lightning and by the glow of the lava and hot gases beneath. He later will write, "It resembled a pine tree more than anything else, for it shot up to a great height in the form of a trunk, which extended itself at the top into several branches. I imagine this was because it was thrust up by a blast of air, which then weakened, leaving the cloud unsupported so that its own weight caused it to spread sideways." His description will survive through the centuries, becoming one of the key eyewitness accounts of the disaster. But right now, he is just a frightened young man, watching his world be destroyed. Back on the slopes near Pompeii, Claudia and her family are still huddled under their rocky shelter. The pumice continues to accumulate around them. They are buried up to their waists now, and they must continually dig themselves out to avoid being completely covered. Julia has stopped crying. She seems to have moved beyond tears into a kind of numb acceptance. She leans against her mother, her eyes closed, her breathing shallow in the toxic air. Claudia's husband is coughing constantly. The ash is filling his lungs, each breath more difficult than the last. He knows he is dying, but he tries to hide it from his family, tries to stay strong for them just a little longer. Marcus, their son, is the strongest of them. He is young, his lungs not yet as damaged by the ash. He takes charge, helping his father breathe, comforting his sister, digging them out of the pumice again and again. All around them in the darkness, other people are suffering the same fate. Some call out for help, others pray. Many have simply given up, lying down in the pumice, letting it cover them, accepting death. The sound of the eruption is still constant, a roar that never stops. But it has almost become background noise now, something so continuous that the mind begins to ignore it. What cannot be ignored is the suffocating ash, the constant rain of pumice, the crushing certainty that there is no escape. In the Bay of Naples, Pliny the Elder's rescue ships have been forced to turn back. The conditions are too dangerous. Ash is falling so thickly that it piles up on the ship's decks. The waters are too rough to navigate safely, and the air itself has become toxic, filled with volcanic gases. Pliny the Elder himself has gone ashore at Stabiae, trying to reach the villa of a friend. But the gases overcome him. He collapses on the beach, his great mind extinguished by the mountain's breath. His body will be found 3 days later, looking as though he is merely asleep. Throughout the night, if night can be distinguished from the volcanic darkness that has fallen, the eruption continues. The pumice layer grows deeper, more roofs collapse, more people die. Some die from being struck by falling pumice, others are crushed when buildings collapse on them. Many simply suffocate in the ash-filled air, their lungs unable to process the poisonous mixture of gases and fine particles. In what was once the beautiful garden of a wealthy villa, a dog is chained to a post. As the pumice rises higher, the dog climbs higher to escape it, standing on its hind legs, pulling against the chain. But the chain is too short. The pumice continues to rise. The dog's desperate attempts to escape are futile. Eventually, it is buried, preserved in the position of its final struggle. Centuries later, archaeologists will find this dog, the cavity in the ash revealing its final moments. They will feel pity for this animal, this small tragedy within a greater tragedy. They will make a plaster cast of the cavity, preserving forever the dog's desperate attempt to survive. Similar scenes are playing out across Pompeii. People trapped in positions that will preserve their final moments. A family huddled together in a basement. A man lying on his side, his hands raised as if to ward off the falling stones. A woman clutching a bag of coins, her wealth useless to her now. These are the famous victims of Pompeii, the casts that will move millions of visitors in the centuries to come. But right now, they are not historical artifacts. They are people, dying in fear and pain, their lives cut short by forces they could not possibly understand or control. Around midnight, approximately 12 hours after the eruption began, the nature of the event changes dramatically. The eruption column, which has been sustaining itself through the sheer force of the explosion, begins to collapse. When this happens, the result is something far more deadly than falling pumice. Pyroclastic surges begin to race down the mountain. A pyroclastic surge is a ground-hugging avalanche of hot gas, ash, and rock. It moves at incredible speed, up to 100 miles per hour, and it is devastatingly hot. The temperature can exceed 600 degrees Fahrenheit. Nothing living can survive contact with a pyroclastic surge. The first surge rushes down the western slope of Vesuvius, heading toward Herculaneum. The town, which has been buried under pumice just like Pompeii, is about to face the final blow. The surge hits Herculaneum with tremendous force. The superheated cloud of gas and ash instantly kills anyone still alive in the town. People die so quickly that they don't even have time to react. One moment they are breathing, the next they are not. Their brains are essentially boiled by the intense heat. Some people had fled to the boathouses on the beach, hoping for rescue by sea. They are huddled there, dozens of them, when the surge arrives. They die together, their bodies instantly carbonized by the heat. The surge is moving so fast and is so hot that organic material, wood, cloth, flesh, doesn't burn in the traditional sense. It is instantly vaporized or carbonized. Bodies are reduced to skeletons in an instant, their poses frozen in their final moments. More surges follow, each one sweeping down the mountain, covering more territory. The landscape is transformed by these deadly clouds. Everything in their path is killed, buried, erased. Pompeii, being farther from Vesuvius than Herculaneum and on the southeastern slope, is hit by the surges later. When they arrive, they encounter a city already devastated by pumice fall, already largely dead. But there are still survivors, people who manage to find good shelter, people with strong constitutions who have endured the ash and pumice. They are clinging to life, hoping that dawn will bring an end to the nightmare. The pyroclastic surges take away that hope. The surges roll through the streets of Pompeii, the super-hot gases filling every space, every room, every hiding place. There is no escape. In the gladiator barracks, the underground chambers that have protected the gladiators from the falling pumice offer no protection from the surge. The hot gases seep down into the chambers. The men die quickly. Their suffering ended in moments. Titus's last thought is not of fear or regret. In his final instant, he thinks of his mother, remembering her face from his childhood before everything went wrong. Then there is nothing. Outside the city, where Claudia and her family have been sheltering, the surge arrives. They have survived so much already, the pumice, the ash, the darkness. Marcus has kept his family alive through sheer determination and youth. But when the surge comes, there is nothing he can do. The superheated cloud sweeps over them. Death is instantaneous. There is no pain, no suffering, just a sudden end. They remain there, buried in pumice, preserved in their final positions. A family that died together, Marcus's arm still around his sister, his father's hand still reaching toward his mother. Across the entire region, the surges bring death and destruction. Towns and villages are annihilated. Farms are erased. Thousands of years of human habitation are buried beneath layers of volcanic material. The surges continue through the night and into the early morning hours. 6 major surges in total, each one adding another layer of death and ash to the landscape. By dawn on August 25th, the eruption begins to wane. The column starts to collapse entirely. The energy that drove the explosion is finally exhausted. The mountain has emptied itself, venting its fury, but there is no one left in Pompeii to see the dawn. The city is silent, buried under 20 feet of pumice and ash. Every person who remained in the city is dead. Many who fled have also perished, killed by the surges or by the collapsing buildings or by the toxic air. The death toll is estimated between 13,000 and 16,000 people. An entire population, erased in less than 24 hours. In the days following the eruption, survivors from outlying areas begin to return, looking for their homes, their families, their possessions. What they find is incomprehensible. The landscape has been completely transformed. Mount Vesuvius itself looks different, its peak lower than before, its shape changed. The entire summit has collapsed into the emptied magma chamber below. Where cities and towns once stood, there are now only expanses of gray ash and pumice. In some places, the tops of buildings can still be seen, protruding from the volcanic debris. But most structures are completely buried. The survivors dig frantically, trying to find their homes, trying to recover anything of value. Some are successful in retrieving items from the upper floors of buildings. But most find nothing but ash and stone. Rescue efforts are organized by the Roman government. Emperor Titus, who has recently ascended to the throne, sends aid to the region. But there is little that can be done. The cities cannot be rebuilt. The land is covered in too much volcanic material. The task of excavating and rebuilding would be immense, far beyond the resources available. So a decision is made to abandon Pompeii. The survivors are relocated to other cities. The government provides some compensation for lost property, though nothing can truly compensate for losing everything. Pompeii is left buried. Over time, the exact location of the city is forgotten. Vegetation grows over the ash and pumice. The landscape softens and greens. Within a few generations, it is as if Pompeii never existed, but it does exist, preserved beneath its volcanic blanket. The ash that buried the city also protected it. Buildings that would have crumbled over time remain intact. Frescoes that would have faded stay bright. Objects of daily life are preserved in perfect detail. The city sleeps beneath the earth, waiting. The years turn into decades. The decades into centuries. The Roman Empire rises to its greatest height, then begins its long decline. Christianity spreads across the empire, replacing the old gods. The Western Empire falls to barbarian invasions. The Eastern Empire continues as Byzantium. The Middle Ages come. Europe fragments into kingdoms and feudal states. Castles are built, cathedrals rise. The Renaissance dawns, bringing a rebirth of art and learning. The age of exploration begins, and Europeans discover new worlds. Through all of this, Pompeii remains buried and forgotten. People live on the land above it, farm the fields, build new towns. They have no idea that beneath their feet lies an entire Roman city, perfectly preserved, waiting to tell its story. Occasionally, farmers digging wells or planting vineyards encounter ancient walls or artifacts. They find coins, pieces of pottery, fragments of statues, but they don't understand what they've found. They think these are just random Roman ruins. Common enough in Italy. In the late 16th century, an architect named Domenico Fontana is commissioned to build an underground channel to divert the Sarno River. While digging, his workers uncover ancient buildings and painted walls. Fontana notes this in his records but doesn't investigate further. He has a job to complete, and ancient ruins are not part of his brief. The buried city continues to sleep. In 1709, a farmer named Giovanni Battista Nocerino is digging a well on his property. His shovel strikes something hard, marble. He digs around it and finds that he has uncovered a block of beautiful colored marble, clearly from some ancient structure. He sells the marble and continues to dig, finding more architectural pieces. Word spreads of these discoveries. An Austrian prince, Emmanuel of Lorraine, purchases the land and sponsors excavations. What he's actually discovered is Herculaneum, Pompeii's sister city. But this isn't fully understood yet. The excavations are haphazard and destructive by modern standards. The diggers are looking for treasure, Statues, jewelry, fine objects. They tunnel through the hardened ash, removing what they want and leaving the rest. Many artifacts are damaged or lost, but interest in these buried cities is growing. In the 18th century, during the Enlightenment, there is a renewed fascination with the classical world. Scholars and wealthy travelers want to see and study ancient Roman civilization. In 1748, organized excavations begin at Pompeii itself. A Spanish military engineer named Roque Joaquin de Alcubierre is put in charge. His methods are crude, more like looting than archaeology. But he does uncover remarkable things. The first discoveries are stunning. Buildings with their roofs intact, walls covered in bright frescoes, mosaics on the floors. It is like stepping back in time, walking through a Roman city that could have been abandoned yesterday rather than 17 centuries ago. One of the early discoveries is particularly moving. Excavators find a void in the hardened ash, roughly human-shaped. On a hunch, one of them pours plaster into the void. When it hardens and the surrounding ash is removed, they have a perfect cast of a human body, a person who died in the eruption, their form preserved in the ash. This technique is refined and repeated. More and more casts are made. Men, women, children, dogs, all captured in their final moments. These casts become some of the most powerful artifacts from Pompeii, humanizing the disaster in a way that buildings and objects cannot. The excavations continue through the 19th and 20th centuries, becoming more sophisticated and careful over time. Archaeologists develop better methods. They learn to preserve what they find, to document everything meticulously, to treat the site with the respect it deserves. Pompeii becomes one of the most important archaeological sites in the world. It offers an unparalleled window into daily life in ancient Rome. Unlike other Roman sites, which show only grand public buildings or the homes of the wealthy, Pompeii preserves everything, homes of all social classes. Shops, workshops, taverns, theaters, temples, gardens, graffiti on walls. It is a complete city, frozen in time. Bread is still in the ovens. Paint is still wet on the walls of a room being redecorated. Political slogans advertising last year's elections are still visible on buildings. A meal is laid out on a table. Toys lie where children left them. The site attracts millions of visitors. They walk the ancient streets, enter the houses, see the frescoes and mosaics. They stand in the forum where Romans once debated politics. They sit in the amphitheater where crowds once cheered for gladiators. They visit the temples where people prayed to gods whose names we still remember, and they see the casts of the victims, those haunting forms that remind us that this was not just an archaeological site, but a human tragedy. Each cast represents a person, someone who loved and feared, who had hopes and dreams, who died suddenly and terribly on that August day. The story of Pompeii resonates across the centuries because it speaks to fundamental aspects of the human condition. It reminds us of our vulnerability in the face of natural forces. It shows us how quickly the ordinary can become the extraordinary, how a normal day can turn into catastrophe without warning. But it also preserves for us, in extraordinary detail, how people lived 2,000 years ago. Through Pompeii, we can see that the ancients were not so different from us. They loved their families. They worked hard. They enjoyed entertainment and good food. They gossiped and joked and complained about politics. The graffiti on Pompeii's walls is particularly revealing of daily life and human nature. Someone wrote, "Marcus loves Spendusa." Another person added below it, "So what? Who cares?" On another wall, "I wonder, O wall, that you have not collapsed." So many writers' cliches do you bear. Across town, Epaphra is not a good ball player. These casual inscriptions humanize the ancient world in a way that formal histories cannot. They show us that people in ancient Pompeii were people just like us. They fell in love, they got annoyed, they made jokes. The houses of Pompeii reveal both similarities and differences to modern life. Like us, they valued privacy and family space. Unlike us, their homes were centered around open courtyards rather than being fully enclosed. Like us, they decorated their homes with art. Unlike us, their art often included explicit sexual imagery that we would find shocking. The Romans had different attitudes toward many things. Slavery was common and accepted. Public bathing was a central social activity. Religion was polytheistic and involved frequent ritual sacrifice. Gender roles were strictly defined. These differences remind us that human societies can vary greatly while still recognizing our common humanity. Pompeii also teaches us about volcanic hazards and the importance of understanding natural dangers. The people of Pompeii didn't know they lived next to a volcano. They had no framework for understanding what was happening when Vesuvius erupted. Their ignorance cost them their lives. Today we understand volcanoes much better. We can monitor them, detect signs of impending eruptions, warn people to evacuate. The type of eruption that destroyed Pompeii is now called a Plinian eruption, named after Pliny the Younger, whose descriptions helped scientists understand this category of volcanic event. Yet even with our modern knowledge, volcanic eruptions remain dangerous. Vesuvius itself is still an active volcano. More than 3 million people now live in the vicinity, far more than lived there in Roman times. If Vesuvius were to erupt again with the same violence it showed in 79 AD, the consequences would be catastrophic. Italian authorities have evacuation plans, but moving millions of people quickly is an enormous challenge. The memory of Pompeii serves as a warning of what could happen. The city that was lost reminds us that it could happen again. Pompeii also raises questions about preservation and memory. Is it right to excavate human remains for public display? The casts of the victims are undeniably powerful educational tools, but they are also the bodies of real people who died in terror. How do we balance scientific and historical value against respect for the dead? Modern archaeologists grapple with these ethical questions. Increasingly, there is a move away from excavating purely for spectacle and toward more thoughtful, research-driven excavation. The goal is to learn as much as possible while being respectful of what the site represents. Much of Pompeii still remains unexcavated, deliberately left buried for future archaeologists with better techniques and technologies. This is wise stewardship. Already some early excavations are showing deterioration. Frescoes exposed to light and air are fading. Structures are crumbling. Preserving what has already been uncovered is as important as making new discoveries. The site continues to reveal secrets. In recent years, new excavations have uncovered more houses, more frescoes, more artifacts. In 2018, archaeologists found a fresco showing a gladiator standing over his defeated opponent, a rare depiction of actual combat. In 2020, they discovered a thermopolium, a fast food restaurant, with its counter still decorated with colorful frescoes of animals. Each discovery adds to our understanding of ancient Roman life. Each artifact tells a story: a child's toy, a merchant's scales, a love letter scratched on a wall, a pair of dice, a surgical instrument, a loaf of bread, carbonized but still recognizably bread. These ordinary objects, preserved by extraordinary circumstances, bridge the gap between then and now. They make the past tangible, real, immediate. When you see a 2,000-year-old loaf of bread, you can't help but think about the person who baked it, who perhaps never had a chance to sell it, whose plans for a normal day were interrupted by the mountain. As we come to the end of our journey through Pompeii's last day, take a moment to reflect on what we've explored together. We've walked through the streets of an ancient city in its final hours. We've seen ordinary people going about their daily lives, unaware that everything was about to change. We've witnessed the power of nature unleashed, a force so vast and implacable that human beings, with all their intelligence and adaptability, were helpless before it. We've seen a city and its people frozen in time, preserved by the very catastrophe that destroyed them. The story of Pompeii is tragic, certainly, but it is also a gift to us, the people of the future. Because of the eruption, because of the way the ash and pumice buried and preserved the city, we have an unparalleled window into the past. We can see how people really lived, not just how history books say they lived. We can walk where they walked. We can see the art they created, the tools they used, the games they played. We can read their words scratched on walls in idle moments. We can stand in their homes and imagine their lives. Pompeii reminds us that every day is precious. The people who died there thought they had time. Time to finish their work, time to see their families again, time to do the things they'd been putting off. They didn't know that time was running out. None of us knows how much time we have. This is both sobering and liberating. It reminds us to appreciate the ordinary moments. to tell people we love them, to not put off until tomorrow what matters today. It also reminds us that we are part of a long chain of humanity stretching back through the centuries. The Romans of Pompeii are gone, but they were real people who lived real lives. And one day, we too will be the past. And people in the future will perhaps look back at us with the same mixture of curiosity and connection that we feel when we look at Pompeii. The story of Pompeii is a story of loss, but also of preservation. Of tragedy, but also of human resilience and curiosity. The city was destroyed, but not forgotten. Its people died, but their stories live on. As you drift towards sleep now, let the images of ancient Pompeii fill your mind. The sunlit streets in the early morning, the busy marketplace, the beautiful frescoes on villa walls, the forum with its temples and columns, the amphitheater where crowds once gathered. Imagine walking through those streets on an ordinary day before the eruption. Feel the warm sun on your face. Smell the bread baking, hear the fountain splashing, see the cat lounging in a doorway. Experience the peace of a city that doesn't know what's coming, and then let that peace become your peace. Let the story fade gently into rest. The past has been told. The ancient city sleeps beneath the earth, and now you too can sleep, carried into dreams by the weight of history and the comfort of story. Rest well. Tomorrow is a new day, full of possibility and life. But tonight you have journeyed to the past and back again. You have walked with the people of Pompeii. You have remembered their story, and that is enough. That is everything. Sleep now. Sleep peacefully. The story is told. The journey is complete. Good night.